Good day, sanibonani ninjani. My name is Umpumelelo kaMshengu Shabalala Uchaku, Tungalamavuso Mavuso Amhlophe Uyofisela Nakuba Kuyena. So today I just want to speak about kind of sensitive topic, but then it's something that South Africa can learn from. And its topic namhlanje is gonna speak on how or what we can learn from Russia when it comes to the sanctions they got. As we know, Russia is currently at war with the Ukraine and obviously other countries. Basically, Russia is involved in a war within NATO, and all the countries within NATO are obviously supporting Ukraine, and they're influxing a lot of things and so on. But in trying to research the life in Russia and how has it been like since the sanctions, I am quietly impressed, especially in the economic side, the social side. They seem to be actually doing very good. They seem to have managed to make their price stay stagnant in most of the things they need in their daily lives, from the energy such as petrol, gas, and so on. Whereas compared to other countries like countries linked to within NATO, they have suffered. They have seen an increase in their gas prices, obviously because some of them are supplied by Russia. But then, I am more interested on how Russia has maintained a stagnant economic pace, and it's as if nothing has happened, just minor changes here and there, and what we can learn as a South Africa with reference to the July unrest that happened when we know the former president was arrested, and what happened in South Africa where we saw the whole country burning into ashes. People obviously were not happy. It resulted in looting, and it resulted in many of businesses to be closed, many of business to be looted, and it became difficult to get resources for our daily lives in South Africa. For instance, if ubufuna uthenga isinkwa eMlazi, you probably had to travel like 4 or 5 sections to get isinkwa in one section that was supplying the rest of Umlazi. And that was because that one section had someone who had a business here, bakery. All Sasco and all these BB breads were not coming in anyway because they were not made. Supply shut it down, just like that. So it kind of gave us some of the things that we could expect if South Africa is to face any challenges when it comes to depending on other countries for things like as simple as food. And that was a wake-up call for us. Back to Russia. Russia has maintained the pricing. I watched this YouTuber, she's called Ellie from Russia. So she was the one who always like tries and updates the rest of the world on YouTube on how business is like in Russia during these times. And I've been following her since the war began. And obviously I'm impressed about how Russia would find some of the businesses owned by the Western countries. The Western countries obviously moved out of Russia to not do business with them, such as McDonald's. And straight after McDonald's, Russians who already had established small businesses such as similar to McDonald's, they came in and took over those infrastructure and carried on running the same business. Just to change the names, obviously, for the licensing and so on. And they are doing a good job. It's like you don't have McDonald's, but you have something similar to McDonald's. You don't have Coke brandings, but you have cold drinks that are similar to a Coke, which are made in Russia. So that is good for the economy because yonke imali stays within Russia. And when it comes to things of banking system, obviously, Russians suffered a lot when it comes to the SWIFT banking system thing, and it resulted in people's accounts being blocked. People's are not allowed to do transactions internationally. So Russians were suffering in that sphere. And also another example is the late Roman Ibrahimovic. I don't know how to say that surname, but he was the one who was owning Chelsea, one of the biggest football clubs in the world. Chelsea is from England, and it was owned by a Russian businessman. And obviously, because of these sanctions, it resulted in him beluta a country club without any valid reasons besides Russia is at war against NATO's wishes. So Chelsea was taken just like that, and it became difficult. Those are just some of the examples of how Russians face some challenges when it comes to these things, and also the SWIFT. Obviously, accounts were shut down. They couldn't do international transactions. They couldn't do businesses in other countries, and so on. But luckily, China came into aid and helped them with the Union Pay, which is something I'm familiar with because I also work in China, live in China. So Union Pay, banking system in China, it just came in and helped. And it kind of gives us some idea of how to swindle around being independent as a country when it comes to South Africa. For example, we have been trying to create a state bank. I don't know how many presidents have said they want to create a state bank, and it becomes a problem. It always becomes a problem when an African country, independent country, wants to create their own banking systems. For instance, Muammar Gaddafi, what happened to Gaddafi when he wanted to create African currency for the whole of Africa using gold. Today, he's no longer in the world because you all know they invaded his country, they killed him, and just like that, because of his great ideas to help and develop Africa. So same as South Africa, it becomes difficult for any president of South Africa to enforce such policies that allow the support of South Africa to own a state bank, to own resources. And this is just the pure examples of how Russia, or a way Russia is showing us this is how you could do it. This is how you could start by firstly things like food, having and running those businesses as locals, heavy supply when it comes to bread, when it comes to maize meal, when it comes to chicken. We know the poultry industry in South Africa is suffering a lot because also from the enforcements of America to put in their junk chickens in South Africa. And we know what Barack Obama did and said during Ite Zuma when he wanted to put some chickens in South Africa by force and threatened South Africa for chickens, imagine. So that resulted in South Africa agreeing to that. And obviously the poultry industry in South Africa was affected a lot. But that is an example. When the South African poultry is affected a lot, most of them would shut down, and it becomes difficult for locals to start a poultry farm and distribute inkukhu to citizens of South Africa or buy them, because it becomes difficult for the competition. Obviously, inkukhu is much cheaper. So those are just some of the examples whereas I would encourage South Africans to start doing businesses. Qalani umbila wenu, qalani ushukela wenu, locally made and also owned by the people of South Africa. Qalani fast foods, similar to McDonald's, follow the trends of these restaurants, Western restaurants which are in South Africa, and try by all means to ensure what's in the supply the communities with food. Once nalungisa inkinga yokudla, you'll be sorted, because another example would be Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe faced sanctions. They didn't have plan B when it comes to supplying ukudla to the citizens. The citizens ended up being hungry, and it created havoc in Zimbabwe. So the July unrest was kind of a wake-up call to South Africans to look at this at another perspective. Should we want to take our resources back as South Africans? Should we want to own our own minerals? What do you think the West is going to say? What do you think the West is going to do to South Africa when it comes to sanctions? They're going to sanction us, and we're not going to have access to we're not going to have access to all these imports of food coming from other countries. They're going to close our banking system. What plan B do we have? What plan B do we have? So this is where all things like BRICS come in. BRICS, you can see they just don't care whether US, no man, if you're part of them, they help you assist. And it's kind of a debate in South Africa whether should we stick by all means to BRICS or should we just lay low. Because even in supporting Russia, it's like President up and down is trying to balance between the West and obviously BRICS. But then this is just food for thought, something we can think about. But I do encourage South Africans to start businesses. especially in the food industry and in the farming industry. Make sure ukuthi citizens in townships like Soweto, they buy stuff from Soweto, and Soweto is able to sustain their livelihoods ngokudla, first of all, more than anything else. Try ukuba nama-farm abantu abamnyama whereby they supply these communities abantu abamnyama. If that is sorted, then anything else iyobonakala later on, because into ebalulekile is food in our stomachs, and that is the message I'm trying to send out today. And thank you very much. Do remember to like, subscribe, comment anything or your inputs about this topic. Thank you.